I didn't notice it all at once. At first, it was him waking up earlier than me. Not groggy, not stumbling out of bed the way he used to, but purposeful. Soft footsteps. A faint clink of a glass. The low hum of a podcast drifting through the door. Then it was his posture. Straighter. Lighter. As if some invisible weight had finally slipped off his shoulders. I should have been happy. A good girlfriend would have been happy. And I was somewhere beneath everything else. But there was this tightening inside me, thin as thread but pulling, pulling, pulling. He came into the living room one morning with slightly damp hair. There was a glow around him I couldn't explain. Not sweat. Not effort. Something else. Confidence. Progress. A direction he had carved for himself while I was still struggling to choose one. Morning, he said, and kissed my forehead. He smelled like early wind and mint and something warm. Something steady. I forced a smile. Morning. He sat on the couch, grabbed one of those books he'd started reading, thick non-fiction things with titles like Discipline is Freedom and Atomic something. I wished it was Atomic Samurai, but it wasn't. I watched his eyes move, the corners of his mouth lifting every so often like he had just discovered a version of himself he'd always wanted to meet. My heart ached with pride. And something colder. Something I didn't want to name. When we first met, it was me who had the structure. Me who reminded him to breathe, to rest, to try again. He used to rely on me. His softness, his hesitation, his uncertainty, all of it made me feel like I mattered. Like I was the anchor he wrapped himself around. But slowly, he was shedding old versions of himself like snakeskin. Flourishing. Growing. Becoming someone clearer, stronger, more awake. And somewhere deep inside me, a voice whispered, "What if he doesn't need you anymore?" I hated that voice. I hated that it existed at all. That evening, as I curled beside him on the couch, he wrapped an arm around me without looking up from his book. Natural. Unthinking. My safe place. And yet, that thread pulled again. I watched him turn a page with the kind of quiet focus I used to wish he had. I used to beg him to see himself the way I saw him. Now he was beginning to, and instead of celebrating, I was terrified. Because what happens when someone you love becomes the version of himself he always dreamed of being? Does he turn around and still find you there? Or does he realize he deserves more? Later, he laughed, a soft, warm sound, at something on his phone. His whole face lit up. I hadn't heard him laugh like that in a long time. Not tired. Not forced. Just joy. Pure and unfiltered. I should have smiled. Instead, my chest tightened. He didn't show me the screen. He didn't even think to. And that was the moment, tiny, ordinary, forgettable to anyone else, when something in me sank quietly to the bottom of my stomach. For the first time, I wondered if I was watching him grow away from me. It started with a woman at his gym, or rather, the way she laughed when he said something. I wasn't even there. I only heard the story in passing as he tied his shoes, casually recounting his day. He smiled when he talked about his trainer correcting his form, about a girl who lifted more than most of the guys there, about little moments that made his morning kinda fun. Fun. He said it so easily. And I felt ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, because all he did was tell me a normal story. Harmless. Ordinary. But the moment the word "she" slipped out of his mouth, my mind tightened around it like a fist. She. A stranger. Someone who existed for exactly 10 seconds in the conversation. Yet my brain grabbed onto her like she was a warning. I don't even know what she looks like. I don't know her name. I don't know if she even noticed him the way I suddenly feared she might. But I could see her in my head, toned, confident, glowing with that self-assured energy he was growing into. And me? I felt dull in comparison. It wasn't jealousy. Not the usual kind. I wasn't imagining him with her. I wasn't imagining them flirting or crossing lines. No, it was something more pathetic and harder to admit. I pictured him next to her, and the image made me shrink. Because she would match his new energy, his new drive, his new confidence. And I felt like the version of myself he met. The version that comforted him when he was unsure, that held him together when he doubted himself. But he wasn't doubting himself anymore. He was rising. I was stagnant. A few days later, another shift happened. We were cooking together, or rather, he was cooking while I scrolled on my phone, pretending my mind wasn't spiraling. He chopped vegetables with this focused calm he never used to have. He hummed under his breath. He moved like someone who felt good in his own skin. "Babe," he said, glancing at me with those warm eyes. "You look beautiful today." I froze. It was too kind. Too sincere. And I couldn't make myself believe it. "Thanks," I muttered, forcing a small smile. He frowned, just a little. But he didn't push. He kept cooking, kept humming, kept being this improved, evolving version of himself, someone I loved deeply but suddenly couldn't keep up with. Later that evening, we went to a small gathering at his friend's place. I watched him from across the room, laughing with people he used to be intimidated by, telling stories, owning the space effortlessly. He wasn't loud or showy, just present, confident in a way that made others gravitate toward him. I should have been proud, but all I felt was the gap widening between us. At one point, his friend clapped him on the back and said, "Bro, you've really leveled up this year. It's crazy to see." Everyone agreed. Heads nodded. Someone even whistled approvingly. And he smiled, shy but proud, a small blush touching his cheeks. I stood there holding my drink, heat rising in my chest. Everyone could see him rising. Everyone except me, the one quietly terrified of being left behind. And for the first time, I felt something dark, trembling, and cruel inside me. I didn't want him to stop growing. I just wanted him to slow down. Until I could catch up. But I didn't say a word. Because how do you admit something that ugly to the person you love? It was the rain that did it. The kind that taps gently at the windows, steady and soft, like it's trying to remind the world to slow down. The apartment felt dim and warm, shadows stretching across the walls, the quiet hum of the storm settling into the corners of the room. He was on the couch, scrolling through meal prep videos or gym tips, something self-improving, as always, while I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at a pile of unfolded laundry like it might suddenly reveal all my answers if I stared hard enough. I didn't realize I was crying until I tasted salt on my lips. Just a single tear at first. Then another. Then the kind of quiet sob you try to swallow because you don't even understand why you're falling apart. The sound must have carried, because I heard him pause his video. "Babe?" Soft. Concern woven into every letter. I wiped my face quickly, but my voice came out ruined. "Yeah." He appeared in the doorway, hair messy, socks mismatched, hoodie half-zipped, and for a moment, he still looked like the man I fell for. Familiar. Safe. Mine. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. "Nothing," I whispered, shaking my head too hard. "I'm fine." He didn't buy it. He crossed the room slowly, like approaching a scared animal he didn't want to startle. He sat beside me, close enough to feel his warmth, but not touching. "You haven't been okay for a while," he said softly. "Talk to me." I opened my mouth, and the truth pushed up my throat like something that had been trapped too long. "I'm scared," I said, barely audible. His brows pulled together. "Of what?" I stared at my hands. They were shaking. "You're changing," I whispered. "You're growing. You're getting better. Happier. Stronger." And my voice cracked. "I'm not. I feel like I'm standing still. I feel like I'm not enough for you anymore." He inhaled sharply, not offended, not angry. Surprised. Hurt, but not by me, by the fact that I'd been carrying this alone. "Baby," he said, and his voice broke in the middle, "you think I'm outgrowing you?" I pressed my lips together, a tear slipping free despite my effort to hold everything in. "I think you're becoming everything you were meant to be. And I'm afraid you'll realize I'm not part of that version of your life." Silence. Not the cold kind, the heavy, intimate kind. Then he reached for me slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. I didn't. I practically collapsed into him. His arms wrapped around me, firm and warm, and I felt his heartbeat against my cheek, steady, grounding. "I'm growing because of you," he murmured into my hair. "Everything I am right now, every step I take, started the day you made me believe I could be better." I swallowed a sob. But what if I'm not keeping up? He tightened his hold just a little. Then I'll slow down. Or I'll hold your hand. Or I'll carry you if I have to. But I'm not leaving you behind. I'm becoming the man who deserves you. I cried harder, not out of fear this time, but out of something warm and overwhelming. He pulled back just enough to look at me, thumb brushing my cheek. You don't lose me by standing still. You lose me only if you stop believing you matter. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But deep inside, a smaller fear still trembled, fragile and uncertain. Because if someone this good wanted me, then losing him would break me in ways I wasn't sure I could survive. He pressed his forehead gently against mine, voice breaking just slightly. I'm scared of losing you too, you know. And that, somehow, terrified me even more. The morning after our conversation felt strangely fragile, like the world had been wrapped in thin glass. I woke to sunlight spilling across the sheets in soft golden streaks, warming the space beside me where he had already gotten up. For a moment, fear whispered again. He's already awake. He's already doing more. You're already behind. But then I heard quiet rustling in the living room, the kind that meant he was trying very hard not to disturb me. A smile tugged at my lips despite everything. He'd always been gentle in ways most people never noticed. When I stepped out of the bedroom, I found him sitting at the table, hunched over something. A notebook, brown leather cover. His handwriting, messy, slanted, familiar, filled the page. He looked up the moment he sensed me. Hey, he said softly, almost shy. Come here for a second? I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to. Because I didn't know if I was ready to face the version of him I'd built up in my mind, the one racing ahead, leaving me behind in the dust of my insecurities. But his eyes were warm, steady, pulling me toward him with a quiet patience I didn't deserve. I sat beside him. He turned the notebook so it faced me. And my breath caught. It wasn't a fitness journal, or a self-improvement checklist, or some ambitious list of goals meant to leave everyone else in the dust. It was titled, Things I Want to Build with Her. My heart stuttered. He flipped the page. Little bullet points filled the next section. Places to travel with her. Skills to learn together. Traditions to start as a team. Things I want to get better at so I can support her. Ways to love her better. How to be the partner she deserves. My vision blurred for a moment. He rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. It's dumb. I know. After last night, I realized I haven't been telling you how much of my growth has always been about us. I shook my head stunned. This is beautiful. He exhaled in relief. Good. Because I need you to know something. His voice softened. I'm not leveling up to leave you. I'm leveling up because you made me want to be someone who could carry you through life, the same way you carried me when I was falling apart. My throat tightened. I didn't carry you. Yes, you did, he said gently. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You were my safe place. You still are. He tapped the journal. Everything I'm becoming, you're in the center of it. And suddenly, the fog I'd been drowning in began to shift. All this time, I'd been so focused on the distance I thought he was creating that I hadn't noticed the space he was making for me inside every dream he had. My voice trembled. I thought I was losing you. His expression cracked with something raw. Baby, I'm trying to become the man who finally feels worthy of being yours. The words settled inside me like warmth sinking into cold skin. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I allowed myself to breathe deeply. Maybe I hadn't been standing still. Maybe I'd just forgotten to look at myself through his eyes. He reached for my hand across the table, fingers sliding through mine with that quiet certainty that had always felt like home. Let's grow together, he whispered. Not you behind me. Not me ahead of you. Just together. I blinked back tears and nodded. I didn't transform overnight. There was no sudden glow-up, no dramatic montage, no instant shift where I became the woman I thought he deserved. It was smaller than that. Softer. More honest. The next morning, I sat on the edge of the bed with a journal he'd quietly placed on my pillow, blank pages waiting for me like an invitation instead of a demand. I stared at it for a long moment before opening it. The first line I wrote wasn't profound. It wasn't poetic. It was shaky and simple. I want to feel proud of myself again. Something in me cracked open and breathed at the same time. I started making tiny changes after that. Not to impress him. Not out of fear. But because last night showed me a truth I'd forgotten. I was allowed to grow too. I began with small morning walks, nothing intense, nothing for Instagram, just 15 minutes of air filling my lungs and my heartbeat reminding me I was still alive and capable of becoming more. I cooked a meal from a recipe I'd saved 2 years ago and never tried. I said no to work I didn't have the capacity for. I washed my hair, not because I had to, but because I wanted to feel the softness against my neck again. Tiny things. So tiny most people wouldn't even notice. But he noticed. God, he noticed everything. One afternoon, I was sitting on the balcony reading a book, not doom scrolling, actually reading, when he walked out with 2 mugs of tea. He stopped when he saw me, a slow, warm smile spreading across his face like sunlight. "You look peaceful," he said softly, handing me the mug. "I feel lighter," I admitted. "Just a little." He sat beside me, knee touching mine, and the warmth of it traveled up my body. Not the old kind, the desperate, please don't leave warmth. This one was steady. Shared. Equal. "That's all I ever want for you," he murmured. Days passed like that, small healing, small progress, small joys. We helped each other without even trying. He didn't drag me into his routines, he invited me. I didn't cling to him out of fear, I reached for him because I wanted to. And slowly, the distance I had imagined between us melted into something else, a middle ground we were both shaping with gentle, imperfect hands. One evening, we took a walk at sunset, the sky dripping in pink and gold, the air warm and soft around us. His hand found mine without thinking, and I leaned into his shoulder, feeling the quiet pride radiating from him, not because he was ahead of me, but because he could finally see me coming alive beside him. "I'm proud of you," he said suddenly. "For what?" My laugh was small, shy. "For trying." He squeezed my hand. "For choosing yourself. For choosing us." I swallowed around the emotion rising in my throat. "I'm proud of you too. For everything." He turned to me at the sound of my voice, eyes reflecting that sunset glow. It hit me then, this wasn't the same man I met. And I wasn't the same woman. We had changed. Shifted. Grown. But not apart. Never apart. He brushed a loose strand of hair behind my ear, his voice low. "Wherever I go, I want you there. Not because I need you to keep up, but because you're my favorite person to become better with." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the words settle into the deepest parts of me, the parts that once believed love was a race, a test, a fragile thing that slipped away the moment someone improved. But here, with the fading light painting him gold, I realized the truth. He wasn't growing away from me. He wasn't outpacing me. He wasn't rising to a level that left me behind. He was growing toward the life we were both learning slowly, imperfectly, to deserve. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was growing toward it too. Like and subscribe.